Hi, everyone. I like to just jump into the talk, so let's just start. The framework has changed. I feel it in the code. I feel it in the builds. I smell it in the tech forums. It began with the forging of the 3 stores. 3 were given to Angular developers, structured, powerful, and reactive above all else. The global store, vast and powerful. The component store, lightweight and precise. And the signal store, fresh and efficient. For within these stores was bound the power to manage state, to bring order to applications, each with its own strengths, each suited for different needs. Because the world of state management is treacherous, and without guidance, chaos can still arise. For the time will soon come when NgRx will shape the fortunes of all devs. So, as you may have guessed from the title and this kind of weird introduction, I will reference some Lord of the Rings things throughout my talk, because I like to sprinkle a little bit of whimsy in my talks. I think it helps to retain attention, especially after lunch, and especially for gaining complex, to learn new things. But if you're not a fan of the movies or the books and you haven't read or seen, don't worry, the concepts are easily understandable for everyone. But I strongly suggest to watch the movies. They're so good still today. So this talk began because I was talking with my teammates, and we decided to convert our services in our application into stores, and we decided to use NgRx stores. The problem was that none of us kind of knew how to use stores. Like, I had seen the global store and knew something about the new signal store, but didn't even know the component store existed until I read it in the NgRx documentation. Someone sometimes does read the fucking manual. You see it here first. So we began searching and searching, and I found out that apart from the documentation of NgRx, there are no articles, videos, or talks that I know of course. You're welcome to say that I'm wrong. That were comparing all 3 of the stores together at the same time, just to have a clear overall view of what they can do. So to get a hold of everything, I did some research, and here we are with my talk, because I hope that it can help someone that maybe is finding themselves in the same position that I was with my team, and maybe it can let you all discover something new. So I associated the stores with the 3 rings given to the elves. And I'll start with the global store, which I associated with Vilya, the ring of air. And it has the traits of wisdom, influence, and governance. So, of course, global store, because it's the oldest one, so it's the one that has more wisdom. And it governs over large applications with complex state that has a state that needs to be accessed by lots of components. It has a high complexity because it uses actions, reducers, selectors, and effects. And also you have to use NgRx. You have lots of files, so lots of boilerplate code to connect everything. And also, well, a steep learning curve, because no one likes RxJS, pretty much. And of course, it is too much overhead for smaller applications, because, come on, let's face it, 4 different files for state management in a small application, it's crazy. But it has also some strengths. One of the main ones of the global store is the Redux DevTools browser extension that lets you time travel in your application. So you have some screenshots of the state before and after actions and effects, and you can see what has changed and when, and you can go backward and forward without having to put debuggers or console log inside of your code. That I know that some of you do it. I do it all the time. And it is really great, and I hope we have time at the end of the talk to show you. And also, of course, this is the most mature of the stores. So it is the most opinionated and structured, so you have clear directions to how and when use the store. These are the files. So we have the reducer, which is the main state. So you see we have a companion list, which is an array, and a quest list, which is another array. And then in the bottom, we have what updates the state. So in this case, the companion list to assign quests, and also a load quest list success that updates the quest list. But to call these updaters, you have to use actions, so another file. And like in this case, you see that we have assign quest, and why am I using load quest list and load quest list success? Because I wanted to show you effects. So in this case, load quest list is an action that gets called in the component in the onInit, and it gets it triggers an effect. So you don't directly trigger effects, but they get triggered by actions. That's why they're called side effects. So usually they're used for the backend APIs. In this case, I'm mocking a fetch request for get the list. So I trigger the load quest list on init on the component. The effect catches it, does the backend request in this case, and then the payload gets passed to the load quest list success that we can see at the end here, and the quest list gets updated in the store. Also, we have the selectors because it's best practice to directly reference the store. So to have the slices of the state that you need, you use the selectors. In this state, of course, companion list and quest list. So you see lots of files. Then I want to talk about the component store, which is kind of the underdog of the state management. I don't know how many of you know it. I didn't. And its traits are preservation and maintaining stability because it's so lightweight and it's so simple in its code that pretty much you don't have to change anything in your code. You can kind of see it like a service using subjects, pretty much. So, of course, it's one of the pros, the fact that you don't have that much code. And also, it allows you to have multiple instances of the same component, so you have a better separation of concerns. Also, it has, well, simple syntax, but we don't have actions or reducers in this case that won't allow us to have the time travel debugging. And another downside is that everything is in the same file, so we have updaters, the state, and effects, and selectors all in the same file. So it has a low scalability because if our needs for updating the state grow, of course it grows the file, so not the best. Also, being connected to the component, of course, the component store is connected to the component's lifecycle. So when we create the component, the store gets component. When we destroy the component store gets destroyed. So of course, no permanent state. This is the code. So you can see at the beginning, we have a constructor method for the state, which is member status, made of companion and status, which is a string const. And then we have the updater, which changes the state from alive, unknown, and dead. Kind of dark, I know, it will make sense. And then we have the select, which will select the member status that we want to show in our component. Now, a small confession. The NgRx team has put this notice on the site, on the component store page, and it says that for local state management, they say that it's better, they encourage the use of signal store. Don't worry, I'm not crazy. Stay with me here. I wanted to nevertheless talk about component store because I know for a fact that a lot of people are still using versions of Angular and NgRx store less than version 17, which is the version with which Signal Store was included. This is an NPM screenshot that I took like a month ago, and you can see hundreds of thousands of people that still download versions less than 17. And also, a lot of people maybe don't want to or cannot upgrade because of dependencies or libraries and whatever. So they may still be in need of local component state management. If you're one of these cases, you're welcome. Here's your solution, component store. Lastly, let's talk about the signal store, which is Narya, the ring of fire. And it represents resilience, courage, and action. I think these traits are well represented by the NgRx team switch toward a kind of new type of store in this case, because it has a composability way of building your state needs that we will see in a while. So it is very, very simple in its basic form. And also, of course, everything in the state is a signal. All the state, all the properties in the state. So you can directly access them, and you won't need any kind of selectors. It's pretty much plug and play, because you just install it, and you can start using it. With the simplest way, you just use with state, with computed, which works like normal computeds, you're on. Of course, it has optional RxJS use. So if it's important, the bundle size of your application, you don't have to use RxJS. If you don't want to use it, you're welcome. That is. It's also good for reactive programming, as we will, as our application will, of course, react to changes and not ask for what changes there were in the app. And also, there are some cons. Of course, it's still new, so we have kind of a limited official guidelines, documentations, but moreover, not that many complex examples on the internet, if you want to use Copilot in particular or something like that. And the advanced features is evolving. Like, for example, one of the latest is with events that was released with version 19.2, if I'm not wrong, which is kind of like effects in the global store. Of course, you will have to use signals or convert observables to signals. Kind of obvious. So I think, my personal opinion, that as of right now, it is better suited for small to medium scale applications. While if you have larger applications, maybe it's better to still use the global store. And this doesn't have yet Redux DevTools browser extension compatibility, but if you're interested, there is this unofficial extension, which is the Angular Architect's NgRx toolkit, which has the DevTools, but also other advanced features for the Signal Store. And no, I was not paid by Drainer and Manfred because they are Angular architects. But if they want to, I'm open to bribes. And the last thing that I think it's important about the Signal Store that makes it so interesting for me is that it is composable, meaning that you can use it both like a component store and a global store using whatever feature you want. So as I said earlier, you can use it in its basic form with state, with computed, and with methods, which are the methods that you want to use to update your state. But also there are more advanced features. And this has kind of broken the community in the middle because, well, you guessed, developers that can't agree on one thing. Wow, it's something new. Because some developers say that Signal Store was made to be simple and has to remain simple. And other devs say, no, we want to use also more advanced features for the Signal Store. I don't want to express myself here because I don't want to sway you one way or another. I'm just telling the facts. I'm kind of like Switzerland. And an example of a simple store is, of course, you have the state. And this one is used as a global store because it's provided in root. So you have the with computed, which is like computed signals. So you get the list of places and you filter it and you return just the place filtered by the search term, which is in the state. And then you have the update search term for when you digit something in an input that I have in my component. And then the with hooks, which I think are super cool because they are kind of like the component lifecycle. So you have on init and on destroy. So it's something that gets triggered every time the component gets created. So in this case, for example, I'm mocking another fetching of the possible places to search in all of Middle Earth. At the beginning of the store, it will fetch all the places, put it in the store, and I will have it. OK, nice and all. But what if I like maybe 2 of the stores? Or all of 3 of them, and I can't really decide, and I need more power. Well, you have to choose right, because the wrong power in the wrong hands can lead to disastrous consequences. And you have to really, really choose the right store for your right needs, because the elves have much power, but they know how to use it. So in this diagram, I'm doing a little recap to just be sure that you know what you're doing. For example, for first thing, think if you really need state management. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just fine with services. If you think that you need a store, you can think about the scope and complexity of your app. So, of course, if you have large, complex shared state that every component needs access to, maybe it's better to use global store. If you need the local, simple, isolated state that interests only the component itself, maybe use component store. And if you have both of these needs, like both global store and local store, but you want something for simpler code and that has to be reactive to work well, especially with UI, maybe use Signal Store. So for example, in my team, we thought about what we needed, and we knew that we had a small application with very simple logic. We wanted, of course, to avoid boilerplate and unnecessary files, so of course the global store was out of the run. We also had lots of components that needed access only to their own data, because they didn't need to share data from other parts. Also, we had lots of UI-related variables that we wanted to convert to signals because we were using detection strategy on push, and so we didn't have to manage all the mark for changes and so on. And also, we were on Angular 18 and wanted to switch to Angular 19 pretty soon. So in the end, we followed the NgRx team suggestion, and we used the signal store. The way we did it was by making some small proof of concepts, like we are 4 in our team, and each of us did a proof of concept in like half a day, 1 day. And then we compared them to see what was working and what was not working. In the end, we decided that the good things were more than the wrong things. And then we decided to mix them up and choose the best approach for us. So we converted the existing services that had behavior subjects into signal stores for the components. So pretty much all the components had their own component store-like signal store. So we took from the component store the mentality, let's say. And then we had kind of 2 global stores that needed to share the data across all of the app. So I talked about wanting more power, wanting something more. Well, you can use the stores all together to have the power, the ultimate power of the one ring. For example, you may use the global store part to manage this shared state across all of the application, the component store to encapsulate the state that is specific only to the component or to some feature. And lastly, use the signal state where you really need the component to be reactive and update the UI really fast. Of course, using all of 3 together is a little bit too much, I admit it. Usually, I would suggest to use 2 of them, like 1 for global state and 1 for component state. But I wanted to say this just because I wanted to show you that it is really possible to use all of them together without any kind of problem, any kind of hiccup. You just install them, and they don't have any problem because they were designed that way. So let me just show you a small example. OK, so here is the app that I made, and you can see nothing. You can see nothing. OK. Dov'è il... Ok, proviamo a fare il classico. No, è questo qua. No? Technical problems. Have you ever been to one talk when there was no technical problem? At least one conference? I haven't. No, questo qua. No, è Firefox. Che adesso non si vede un cacchio. Non si sta continuando a vedere. Ok. Well, as you know, I'm a fan of Pokemon. So in the questions, you can ask what my favorite Pokemon is, if you like. And no, it's not the one. I just like the vibe. So as you can see from this example that was so hard to let you see, here we have the Redux DevTools extension that I was talking about. In this case, I'm making it run on Firefox because Chrome has decided with the manifest debacle to not make it work. So I couldn't show it to you on Chrome, but fortunately, this still works on Firefox. I hope they are working on it on Chrome too. Hope. So you can see that at the beginning, we also have no quest because I backtracked in time when the state had only the companion list because I didn't call the action. Load quest list success was triggered by the action and the effect. Because you see here, I have the load quest list, the first one that I call in the component on init, which triggers the effect. And in the next step, it gives me my quest list. So you can see which action gets triggered at what point in time. You go back, you go forward, and then you can see the state that has been changed, like the state that is in every moment. So we have the companion list, which has some results, the quest list, which is empty, and then we can see that both of them have values. You can also see only the differences between the snapshots of the state. So I think it is really, really cool to, especially if you have lots of actions, lots of aspects that have an impact on your state. This is really, really helpful. So to be silly, let's try it. The first section, of course, is the global store. And we want to say that maybe Sam is going to destroy the ring with Lord Frodo. And then we assign the quest. And you saw that the action got registered by the Redux DevTools. And of course, here we have the current quest of Sam is destroying the ring. So likewise, if we say that Gandalf is going to rescue the captured hobbits, yes, we have another action. Let's say that we want to say, no, I did something wrong, I don't like it. We go back in time, no quest. So it's really, really cool, in my opinion. Then I'll show you the component store. So each of the blocks that you see is a component, a member status component, and each has its own instance of the component store, which is the same from all of them. So I can update the status for, let's say, Frodo and Sam, because they're in Mordor and we don't know where exactly, so this is unknown. And then we can say that maybe, well, Boromir, spoiler, is dead, R.I.P. You know the actor, so he goes with the fame. But you see that I changed the state, and it didn't have any impact on the other ones, because they have their own instances. Lastly, we can see the signal store, which has, of course, reactive. So I'm searching for AN. You see that it gets updated super, super fast. So this just to show you that I just installed all of these stores into the application, and then I created all my stores and my components, and there's no problem. In fact, in this component, for the component store, I'm using the list coming from the global store, from the companions, to get the initial list, to get the for loop, to create each of the components. So you can also make them talk together. So if I wanted, I could maybe, I don't know, send the updated status from the component to the global store to update it, and so on. It's on a GitHub repo that I will link in at the end of the talk. So if you want to try it, fork it, and change it, you're welcome. I'm going to change tab. I hope it works. Probably not. Oh. Non mi sta rimanendo più sulla... Ok. Quello in basso a destra, questo? Ma perché era quello che premevo prima. È proprio sbroccato. Scusate, termini forti. Vabbè, Pito. Sono così belle che volevate rivederle, mi ha detto qualcuno dal pubblico, ho sentito. Ecco, per te dal pubblico che me l'hai chiesto. Okay, so we now know what each store can do and what are its cons and its its strengths. But we also have to keep in mind that no one store is above all the others, because each of them has its own purpose and its own way of working well for whatever we need. We also know that we have to really think about what we need for our applications, so we must think if we need state and what are our needs, what are our components, talk between them. And for this, I strongly suggest, if you have the occasion, to do as me and my team did, so do a small POC, because you will for sure find out something that you didn't think in the beginning. Maybe you'll find that you hate that kind of store. It can happen. And also, we have to be aware for the fact that we don't have to go into the temptation of using one store when maybe we don't even need one, because you have to resist temptation. Do as Galadriel did. And now you can go into the world, because the fate of Angular state management now rests in your hands.